Okay, welcome back. The last speaker for before the break, before lunch break, is Frederik Gladhorn, and he will talk to you about input and QtQuick, mouse touch and keyboard handling in QtQuick. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Whoa, excellent. What a great audience. I'm really happy that so many of you are here. I wasn't sure if I'd be standing here alone. Yeah, I hope you're not scared of rectangles, because I'm going to show a few of those. For those that prefer circles, I also built in one circle. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Frederik Gladhorn. In the greater picture of Qt, I do maintain accessibility. I have been working on Ingenio lately, and I worked with the QtQuick controls team quite a bit on input, and I have learned a few things there that I thought might be worthwhile sharing. I do work in Oslo with Digia, and being in Oslo also enables me to sometimes head out into the forest. Yeah, what am I going to talk about? That's really simple, just like the title said. And well, let me quickly ask, who has used QtQuick before of you? All right, that's pretty much everybody, great. At first, when preparing this talk, I thought, well, actually, this is not so difficult, and I'm not sure if I can actually fill an hour or so of time, until I realized that I had quite some misconceptions about how things worked internally, and it did take me quite some time to refresh the implementation details to really be able to tell with confidence how things work. So I have this kind of boring agenda here, really, those three topics, but that's what I want to talk about. I'll start a bit with the basics, but then go into a bit more detail for each. And I hopefully show some examples that make it clear how things are connected and work. So mouse is the first topic, and a lot of the things that I say about the mouse handling apply to touch handling. So that's why it's easiest to start with the mouse in that case. And the keyboard handling is a bit independent of those. So for mouse, yeah. How is it possible to use the mouse with QtQuick? Well, you all know that QtQuick item is the base of the QtQuick universe, I would say. There are two items that we have, of course, MouseArea and Flickable. I assume, well, those are probably not news to you. If not, it's no problem. I'll quickly tell what they are. And they are custom components that can implement mouse handling in various ways. I'm not going to talk about that too much today, though. So the first thing is MouseArea. It's pretty simple. I would just quickly like to highlight how you can use it. I put the example running in the top right, right corner. Left and right are sometimes confusing. So I have this mouse area, I declare it, I give it an ID, and I actually need to give it a geometry. So if you know QtQuick, there are items that are visual, and the mouse area is an item that sits in the hierarchy. It needs to have a geometry because the mouse events have a position, but actually it's not visible for, so that you can make things look the way you want. And then I just use that is great. I don't really care about the Wi-Fi. Sorry for that. So I don't really care about the... Now I lost my context. I don't care about the Wi-Fi, exactly. I could say that 3 more times. Thank you. Anyway, so I will just react to the mouse pressed, and this works out of the box as expected. And here, if I click the button, the mouse area turns blue, and I suppose this is, relatively straightforward. Not going to spend time on that. Then we have a property. If you want to detect the mouse over your item, you can enable hover, So hover enabled, and that in my opinion is a bit of a misnomer, leads to detecting when the mouse is inside the mouse area. And with only this change, I can use the mouse.contains mouse. So I use this ID here, mouse.contains mouse. Okay, whenever I move the pointer inside, it will switch colors. That is pretty straightforward. Yeah, I will also make the slides available as QML if somebody's interested, but feel free to take pictures, of course. So far there's no magic. It's just that keep in mind hover enabled needs to be set for this to work. Otherwise, contains mouse will only be true when the mouse button is pressed. Then something that comes up every once in a while is how can I get custom shapes into my mouse area? This is a bit of a wall of code because I actually have a bit of code to detect if the mouse is inside a circle. So here I have a rectangle and it's going to be round by setting the radius. This will be the one circle among the many, many rectangles today. And I can just start the example. So it's really simple. I draw a rectangle and yeah, I have the background clickable. It will switch color. And I have the circle clickable. And the question is now, what happens if I click in the corner? How can I make it so that the background actually works? So you see it working here, so it's possible. And the answer is quite simple. It's done by event handling. So those familiar with QWidgets know that in the background, the mouse is an event that gets sent around to the different widgets. And in QML, it's actually pretty similar. So my mouse area gets a mouse event offered, and I can decide if I actually want to accept the event or not. So here I just calculate Pythagorean geometry, check if I'm within the radius of the circle, and if I am outside of the circle, I will simply say no, I'm not going to accept the event, and the event will be propagated further. So this is how you can get mouse areas to be any random shape. Of course, the mouse area is still rectangle. Anchors fill parents is still applying, but it behaves as if it was this round thing. I quickly want to just, yeah, for the overview, tell you the properties available. There's clicked, which is higher level in a sense in that it's press and release. There's pressed, there's the X and Y position, and released, which, so the usual cycle is press, release, and click comes right after. Double-clicked is also higher level with a small timer, depending on the platform you're on. There's the wheel event, and then there's cancelled. Has anybody here used the cancelled property? Okay, well, there's one. Excellent. So cancelled doesn't intuitively not make much sense in this list here. Why do I get a cancel event? No, actually the keyboard doesn't cancel the mouse as far as I know. Sorry? If I add a second button, I think not. Yeah? Click and move might be. So actually, well, I could go, if I know my first example here, if I click and I move around, nothing happens, there is no cancel. So actually, no, I can show an example in a second. The cancel happens, for example, in combination with several mouse areas or with a flickable. If I have a button inside a list and I want to be able to scroll the list up and down, it might happen that I press on the button and I start moving and the flickable takes over the mouse event and then I get the cancelled. That is important if you actually were to implement a button, which seems straightforward, but there's some corner cases to keep in mind. So you want to handle the cancel, for example, when you do a visual indication that the button is pressed, but then the flicking starts, And you will get this cancelled, and I'll explain in a second how this works via Flickable. What you get in all of these signals is usually a QtQuick mouse event, apart from the wheel, where you get a QtQuick wheel event. And this mouse event in QML is simply called mouse. You can access its properties like X and Y and which buttons are pressed. And then one really important thing is that these events, they are accepted by default. So the idea is that in the normal case, you don't have to do anything, because if you have an onPressed handler, for example, it probably means that you want to do something with the mouse. And we assume that, yes, you handle it and you don't have to do anything special. But like in the case of the round MouseArea, you want to explicitly not accept it. So you can say mouse.accepted equals false, and then the event will go through your mouse area as if it never got there. To visualize that, if we have a click at a certain position and we have 3 items, actually in the example I reduced it to 2, that was easier to draw. The question is, how does the event move? All of these rectangles here on the left, they simply accept a mouse event. So if I click, the topmost mouse area will get the event, it accepts, and the event is done. And the bottom one, if I click it, well, it works as expected. Now the interesting thing is that I set the other mouse area here on the right side to not accept the event. So it actually doesn't. Oh, it actually doesn't do anything, and the mouse click actually goes through to my slide to change the slide that I did not have in mind. So then the other mouse area here is just the regular mouse area, which accepts the event, and it will turn blue. And the interesting thing is now what happens on the intersection. Well, my top mouse area is transparent for the mouse, and so the next mouse area will get the mouse event offered. So this is how you can control the mouse event propagation. And again, this is very similar to touch events. I'll come to that. Then if I have 2 mouse areas, there's another interesting thing to keep in mind, that the hover event will also only reach the first mouse area. So I enabled hover, so I can highlight when the mouse area contains the mouse. And here you can see I hope the color change is clear enough. If I'm on the green rectangle, it's on top. Only the green one gets the contains mouse set to true. So this is, just to keep in mind, the events do not propagate deeper usually. What I would like to show there is what happens if I have the same setup. I have 2 rectangles with a mouse area inside, but here the second mouse area does not accept the event again. So the hover works just like before, and the blue rectangle I can click, and it will turn red when I press the mouse button. And now the question is, what happens if I click here again on the green rectangle? And here we have a special case. The green rectangle never gets the hover event cancelled, so it will still think it contains the mouse, and the red rectangle gets the event of the pressed, but it does not get the hover event. And this is where we are on thin ice actually, because after the click, both mouse areas contain the hover true. And this has to do with the event propagation. So there are some really tricky pitfalls that you have to keep in mind when you do this hover detection. It is not always completely reliable, and we are working to improve some corner cases there. Yes?
What happens with the on release now?
On
release?
No, because you only get the on release when you accept the press. That is, I should really mention that. So the way it works is that when we get a mouse event, and we try to find somebody that accepts the event, and the first thing we always get is the press event. So then we have exactly one item getting the mouse events, and that is called this mouse grabber item. That's an implementation detail bleeding through in a few places. And the mouse grabber is the one item that gets all follow-up mouse events. That's because of the way the mouse handling is implemented. We send all further mouse moves and the release to exactly that one item. That is why the green one here doesn't get updated. Yes?
Is there a possibility that both mouse errors are accepted the click event?
Yeah, the question is if it's possible to let both mouse areas accept the click. And yes, there is. For click actually, because press and release are low level and exactly one mouse area gets them, but the click is a higher level event, and we have a flag to let the higher level events propagate. So I believe it's called propagate composed mouse events. Anyway, in the API documentation, it's composed mouse events. Yeah.
So the propagation goes from top to bottom or other way around?
Yeah, it goes from top to bottom because you would expect the most visual on top, most top level thing to accept the events. So it is the opposite of how it's drawn basically, right? So the thing that sits on top gets the event first, and then we start going down. Wow, this is great. I'm so happy that the audience is so awake. We're turning this into an interactive session.
And so is there also the concept of bubbling from bottom to top?
That is another thing that I wanted to mention with Flickable. I'll get to that. And no, it actually doesn't happen, which is something we want to work on. We didn't manage it for 5.2, but we'll see. Okay, then I'll get a bit, yeah, I'll say some more of these things later again. Let me get back to my examples for now. This is the one I just had. Never mind. So yes, I would. No, this is Flickable. Okay, too many good questions, sorry. This is a Flickable actually. The Flickable element lets me set a virtual canvas bigger than the real one. So I have this content height property, setting it to twice as high as my actual view is, which is 600 by 600. So far, nothing new. And here I just, I can move my two items up and down. And now the question that I actually wanted to ask the audience, which has been preempted a bit, is how does this work? So you guys are so up to speed. So I want to repeat a bit here. If the blue rectangle, if I click it, it turns red. You'll have to trust me that I click. I didn't find a good visualization. So I press it, it turns red, and that is done here by simply asking for mouse.pressed, then red, otherwise just do the normal highlighting when it contains the mouse. And what is interesting is actually that the press gets, now here I get the press. This would be I draw my button as pressed if it would be a button. And now I start moving. So if I start moving the mouse up, all of a sudden the pressed obviously becomes false because it turns back to blue. So what happens here is that the Flickable has a special property set which lets it see its children's events. So there's another way of interacting in a more complex way with the mouse, which means you can actually, in one element that sits lower in the graph, in the tree, you can watch all the elements of a child of yours, so to speak. So the Flickable will observe the mouse events to the blue rectangle and of course to the green one as well. And when I now start moving the mouse and I, depending on the platform, go more than a certain threshold, I get the mouse cancelled. So this is where the cancelled is really important. It means you can unhighlight your button and just the Flickable takes over the event. Okay. Sorry, one at a time. Maybe you first, and then we go back here.
Can this be prevented by the children?
Yeah, next slide. Here was another question.
The hovering didn't seem to work quite right. Was it a bug or?
That is a really good question. So on this one, it works. The problem is, yeah, with the blue one gets it. Oh yeah, if I go out of the window, I would say that is a bug. Yes, the hovering should. Well, that's another interesting thing about hover. Actually, hover will, when it's enabled, the contains mouse property will always be true as long as the mouse button was pressed in the element and there was no cancel or release. So this is usually what you want, because if you have, for example, if you have a scroll bar and you click the knob to move it up and down, and you start moving slightly out of the little knob, which happens really easily if you move the mouse up and down, then you don't want the scrolling to stop. So usually if you press in an element, it always says it contains the mouse and keeps handling the mouse. Yes. Wow. Okay.
There's another problem with the Flickable and the mouse wheel and hover. If you put the mouse in the green rectangle and use the mouse wheel to flick,
it actually stays highlighted.
It stays highlighted, and this is really a problem with any delegates that have a mouse over effect in list views and stuff like that.
Okay. I believe we have something we talked about, maybe fixing some of these issues with V4, because we have a better control of some of the items. Did you file a bug? Okay. It is, yeah, so you see it is really complex and there are more hidden pitfalls than expected. This, I will take a note of this one. But the question before was, how do I stop this from happening? Because
It's not especially for the Flickable, so I could ask it in the end.
yeah, maybe we move on a bit. I fear we'll run out of time, which is okay if you sacrifice a few minutes of your lunch break, then the queues in the menus will already be less long. So I just wanted to quickly summarize. But I really am happy about the questions, no worries there. Mouse grabber is the concept one item gets all the events as soon as somebody said yes to the press. Then we have the property filters child mouse event, which means that the Flickable sees whatever happens what's inside it. So all its children will automatically show their events to the Flickable. And it's actually something you can do yourself. If you write any custom item that inherits QtQuick item, you can set it to true. And as soon as you do that, you see lots of events passing by in a function that handles these. Then there's the stealing, which the Flickable does. It's a really nice reference. The Flickable code is kind of long, but the mouse event handling is relatively easy to understand with a bit of time on reading the code. So there you can see it just takes away if the threshold was stepped over. And then there's the prevent grab, which I have on the next slide, which answers the previous question, or one of the previous questions. So if I set prevent stealing to true, then I have my example here again, two rectangles, they happily bounce around. And the top one is just a normal red rectangle, there is just nothing to it. It doesn't do anything with the mouse. But the bottom one has prevent stealing set to true. So if I press here, it's red, I move the mouse up and down, nothing happens. So prevent stealing means that if somebody wants to take over, I still don't let them. So this is how you get out of this touch the button and it starts scrolling. Yes. So let's move on. Touch handling. I actually wanted to show something here too, and my screen doesn't really have any touch, sadly. So I took a little tablet with me. I first want to start again, which items actually do handle touch. And you could argue that MouseArea and Flickable are actually misplaced here because they don't really handle touch. But they are, of course, relevant for touch because everybody tests their UI with them. And we had a lot of discussions how we best accommodate this, because creating a new single point area or something didn't seem right. There's so much legacy code. So MouseArea is maybe not the perfect name for it, but it's the element that handles simple single press. Flickable is the same. Then we have PinchArea and MultiPointTouchArea, and of course you can again implement your custom items. PinchArea is a bit more convenient. It handles most of the two-finger gestures you would expect, and this is, I think, 90% of the touch use cases, the stuff that should hopefully just work, which is rotation, scaling, and moving the item while doing those. Let me see if I can show you an example before I show you the code. Here I have just, the tablet. I guess you can see the rectangle, and here with two fingers, or I have a hard time positioning them on the screen. But you can see I'm just doing the scaling, and there's nothing else it does. And I wanted to, oh no, I stopped my presentation. I wanted to show you the code real quick. And that is just, I have rectangle is, oh, this still legible? No. Yeah, I just manipulate this orange rectangle that's there, and the pinch area actually has a few properties. I have the target, which I can set on an item. I could also manually handle the properties it has, which are like scale and others. So, and if I only set a target, then pinch area doesn't do anything yet. I need to, for scaling, for example, enable minimum scale, maximum scale, and then I can pinch and it will be in those confines. I have the same for rotation. If I just comment in those two lines, I'll be able to rotate the item, and I can do the same for dragging. I suppose we are low on time, so I can just start this. It takes a second for Creator to actually run this. In the meantime, I might get my slides back also. That was not so clever. Where are we? So, and let's see if it works. It just, oh, that's horrible being big on screen. Here you have the carved pumpkin that we had on Halloween, and oh yeah, it starts good. So now I have all the usual functionality. I can rotate it within the confines I set, so plus minus 90 degree, and I can pinch it with the fingers. Yes, this is pinch area. I can show the code for a second longer. So you simply set those properties, and it is actually convenient as long as you don't have extremely special use cases like the gentleman in the front row. Or actually, yeah, for that case, we offer the multi-point touch area, and I'll just start the example there because it takes a second to run it on the Android device. Let's see, and the multi-point touch area gives you a choice of the number of touch points you want to handle, which means you can use the mouse area as usual, and that is sensible when you want to have mouse handling but also multi-touch handling, just like pinch area works nicely together with mouse areas. So you can stack them up, and due to the stealing, same as Flickable does, they can take over the event, and they see if there's 2 touch points, they will happily grab it away and start letting you do the pinch. The touch point area is a bit of lower level API. It lets you directly access the touch points, and then you can do any geometric manipulation you like. So I think it's actually running. Let's see. I have a small example here, which, well, I declare 5 touch points and handle those touch points here in a particle flame. Let me show the demo, and then we dive into the code. I hope it works. So here is the tablet, and if I touch now, I get some particle effects. And it works with 2, and it works with 3 fingers, and well, up to 5 now, since that's what I hard-coded. So this demo, yeah, it's pretty simple. I use the MultiPointTouchArea. I say I want 1 to 5 points handled, and then I declare those points, and inside the particle flame, I simply access their x and y. So I don't want to talk too much about the particle system. The interesting bits are those I set from the touch point the x and y, take them over, and that'll work.
Is there also a gesture component?
Currently we don't have. I need to repeat the question. Sorry. And time is running. So gestures, we currently don't have any gesture handling in QML. We can happily take that after. I think I'll try to get through the contents I have. So what happens, and where I said the mouse handling comes into play again with MouseArea. In Qt4, we send a touch event through everything, and if nobody wanted touch, we send the mouse. Luckily, we fixed that in Qt5. So we have this model that I have an element and it gets a touch event offered. If it doesn't accept the touch event, it gets the mouse event offered, because MouseArea and custom code and others simply need the mouse events at the moment. If the item accepts neither, next item will get the events offered. Of course, in order to even get any event, you need to set this item accepts mouse buttons. Yeah, this is how the propagation works nowadays, which is actually logical and what you would expect. One case to keep in mind is that if you don't accept the touch event but somehow handle it, you'll be confused by getting a mouse event right after. So there are no 2 events, it's just because the touch wasn't accepted. Okay, this concludes the touch and mouse for now. I'll happily talk about more details later. There's many exciting implementation details, but I thought I would take the second topic of how you make it convenient to actually handle the keyboard. And the way it works, there's attached properties which are objects you can create only inside another object. And it's the most common one is called keys. Keys simply gives you handlers for different keyboard events. So on space pressed, on pressed, on released, and key navigation. There's one pitfall again. The pressed and released, unlike everything else, do not accept the event by default. And that is because they are so generic that otherwise this element would handle all keys all of a sudden, and that's also not what you want usually. So if you handle one of the keys here, it's one of the few places where you really want to set accepted to true. Then there's key navigation. I'll just start by showing examples. Well, I thought preparing the slides, well, I roughly know touch handling, no problem, it'll be easy. So first thing, draw a little example. I can now press the space key, and here I have this beautiful keys on space pressed color blue, and if I press space and press it again and again and again, nothing happens ever, because there is no focus. So let's start to pimp our example. Focus set to true. I will talk a lot about focus handling now, because that's the actual difficult part about the whole key issues. Actually getting the key event is really straightforward. You get it via keys.onSomethingPressed or the keys on pressed. But the focus is tricky. So let's start the example again, this time with focus set to true. And lo and behold, it turns blue, the rectangle, when I press space. So what you really want to keep in mind is there needs to be a focus when handling keyboard in any case, because we don't know where to send the keys otherwise. Now, this looks easy, problem solved. Well, almost. Now, yeah. What happens if I have two rectangles and they both have set focus to true and they both like the space key? Any suggestions? So the latest wins, which actually is right, except that the creation sometimes of the items turns them around. So if I actually create two items, the one that the one that I first declare will probably get instantiated last and then gets the focus property set to true. So, well, we have a problem. How do we handle this? And now I have an example here which has actually all the focuses set to false. And I have implemented it so that it has a mouse handler. If I press on any item, it will the mouse event will set focus to true. If I now press the space key, I can have the item handle the space key. So I don't set any focus in this example, and when I get the on-clicked, I set focus to true, and you see exactly one item has the focus and it works. But of course, this somehow still doesn't work. How do you sensibly handle the focus? Right now, we have this global thing where any of these items which are the same here can handle the focus. And there are many issues with this. So I would like to introduce another concept, and this is the one that has given me the largest headache while preparing all these slides. It's called the focus scope. Just imagine you have a tab view. So you want to have two tabs, and inside there are a few items, and of course they should be able to have the focus. And then you switch the tab, and then inside the other tab you want the right focus, and you switch back and you expect it to put the focus inside the tab again in the right item. Another example is you have a stack view, so the classical mobile application. You have a certain screen and you can drill into the application, and you can pop back up to this base views. And in those cases, you have no way of remembering the focus with the implementation I showed before, because if the right and the left were different tabs here, I have no way to know where the focus was before. And this is where focus scopes come into play. Focus scope, in the end, is exactly one bit set to true. If you write custom elements in QtQuick, you can do that yourself. Most of the time you don't have to, and it works just fine for you, because some elements already are focus scopes. So by default, the loader element is a focus scope and some others. How does it work now? Well, focus scoping introduces more of a hierarchy, and I have now focus handling on several layers, and this was really the thing that is hard to grasp, where most of my colleagues also said they didn't really understand it before. So I hope I can get it across a bit. I have now the left part here, the focus scope, that is the gray area, and it's dark gray to indicate it has focus true. And inside it is the blue rectangle, which also has the focus to true, the number 2 here. And now let me click, for example, the number 6. And you could imagine those two gray things being two different tabs or two lists next to each other, and you want to keep the highlight on the item that was last clicked. And now what you see is, of course, after setting the focus here, it gets the focus, and the focus scope has the focus. But here, the other focus scope does not have the focus anymore. The item inside, though, has focus set to true. And this is the actual interesting bit. So those two elements on one level, the two gray focus scopes, now one of them has the focus, but each of them can keep track of their children's focus independently. Wow. I really think this is a concept that's very useful, but quite hard. So that's why I wanted to spend some time on it. So if you do create a custom component like a list view, anything that has an internal state where the focus can move around, you want it to be a focus scope on some level so that you can remember where the focus should be. If you write a nice complex item and put it inside a loader, that will automatically work. And then you can set exactly one of the children inside to have focus true. Well, we are low on time, but the focus, yes. One thing I haven't mentioned actually is when I prepared, I thought, yes, focus and active focus, they're roughly the same, but maybe I should explain what the difference is. So there's two properties in the QtQuick item. There's the focus and the active focus. They usually go along hand in hand very well, and you can see it here. This item now has the focus true and the active focus, whereas this item has focus true, but active focus is false. So active focus is actually just one branch of the tree of items that I have will have active focus set to true. So this item and its parent focus scope have active focus true, which means that the real focus is there. So if I press space, it will end up there. And focus just means that this is an item that would, if the parent focus scope gains the focus, become the active focus. You can nicely see that also when you Alt-Tab between two windows. Active focus will go away and come back. Okay. Because sometimes it's really hard to handle the focus carefully, there's a function force active focus, which you can call on any QtQuick item, and that will set the active focus as long as your window is active. That is good to keep in mind. You can do that in component on complete and then be certain that it will work. Yes, and the focus is just inside the focus scope. I guess I'm really out of time, so the focus scope, I think I mentioned, it is used already in lists, loaders, tabs, and stacks, and some other items. Key navigation. So this was the basics. You know how to now handle the space key, but you often want to have the tab key working to navigate between different elements. And also you can have a visual navigation inside lists, for example, up and down should select the next item. So I took the same example as before, and I set now key navigation on the rectangles, and I set the tab key. So when I have one item focused and I now press the tab key, it is possible to tap to the next item. So via tab now I can just move the focus around and I declare which item will get the focus after I press tab. Similar, I press up, I press right, I press down. So the key navigation element attached property lets you simply declare target items for down and up and left and right, and for the tab and back tab key. It automatically sets the reverse direction unless you manually override that. So this is one way of making it a lot more convenient. You don't need to manually always have the on tab do this and then force active focus on the other item. Then there's another thing that I think is the most convenient thing, active focus on tab. So what I did now, I took all the rectangles and set active focus on tab to true, and the example doesn't run. We don't have time anyway, so I can fix it later if somebody wants to see it running. Active focus on tab simply does depth first graph traversal on my tree of QML items and moves the focus between all of the items that have active focus on tab true. So that means it will usually find a really nice focus chain for me if I just set it on all the items. For example, the QtQuick controls have this built in and were the trigger for us to implement this. So we just look at the sibling order and we go depth first, and sometimes this doesn't work quite, but it's still a good idea to just set it on all the components you use. And then you can, in some point, the manual focus handling takes precedence. You can override it. Then you just need to make sure that the whole focus chain works again. It is determined, it is not a random order, it is according to the parent will always go to the siblings first, and so the tab focus moves. I am out of time. I have one. Okay, so if you want to, you can have lunch break. If somebody wants to stay with me for another 5 minutes, I'll try to quickly go through the rest. Nobody leaves. Wow. Thanks. That is great. So QtQuick controls. We have actions. This is another thing I wanted to mention because it lets you conveniently handle shortcuts, global ones. So I can just show an example, which is a lot of text. I'm not going to go through the code, but here I have the A key and the B key toggle the color of the red rectangle, green rectangle. I don't know which color it is. So I have two keys and they are actions. That's the last two lines here in the code. So it's just, I declare an action, I set it a shortcode, I hope you can read it. And on triggered, I change the color. This is great. It just works, except, of course, when I have a text input here. What should happen now? I want to be able to type. So I can maybe type hello, but when I want to write the A, this would not work, or does it? So I can type the A despite the A changing the color of the A and B of the background. So this is something I wanted to give you along. It's done by a special event. The focus now can be anywhere, and the focus item usually gets the key presses, except if I have a action, a global action, and this is the same in widgets, by the way. We just took the implementation from there, and the focus will prefer the action unless the object where I try to send the key event. Sorry, I need to start over. So the line edit has something which is called shortcut override. It accepts so-called shortcut override events. So the way it works is that whenever I have something registered as a global shortcut, I create a shortcut override event. I send it to the thing that currently has the actual real active focus, which in my case now was the line edit. And if the line edit now accepts the shortcut override, which by default it doesn't, but if it does, so the text widgets, for example, will do that, then instead of triggering the global shortcut, this item will actually get the normal key press. So this is why when you have space as shortcut for media player application, you can still type a space in the filtering. So the way you do this is simply check the shortcut override event, which is normal key event. If the key was pressed something that you want to handle inside the widget that is focused, you accept the shortcut override and you will get the normal event later. So shortcut override you never do anything with except accept it or don't. Yeah, afterwards you get the regular key event. If not accepted, you get the shortcut triggered. And this was my last slide. Thank you very much. I hope you had some fun. I certainly learned a lot preparing and really great questions. Thanks.
Hi. Okay, my question. Is there a possibility to not get a clicked event when I double click? Because it first triggers the clicked and then the double clicked, which is counterintuitive.
It will always be that way.
And you don't have a good solution around that.
do not have a good
besides
solution.
the timer that you set
Yes.
yourself. Okay.
If you have an idea how we could implement it, I would be interested. The problem is we want to deliver the click as soon as possible, which means
Okay,
that
yeah.
if we start the double click timer, then we
Sure,
can't anymore.
yeah,
So
okay.
yes, it's the way it is.
And another thing that cropped up is there a possibility to only handle mouse events but not touch events? Like handling touch events but not mouse events seems simple, but the other way
Yep.
around, is it possible?
Well, it's actually it depends on it depends on where you are. If you write a custom C++ item, it's really straightforward because you choose which events you accept or not. I believe we introduced a new flag which hopefully makes it into Qt 5.2. I'm not quite sure about the state, to let, for example, MultiPointArea either handle mouse or not. Yeah. More questions? Wow.
Yeah. So coming back to my question of the gesture component.
Yes.
So currently there isn't any there, or is there some library where I can handle it?
We are currently implementing the native gestures from Mac that you get from the touchpad.
Yeah.
So that will hopefully soon be available. It may or may not make it into 5.2. I don't know what the state is, to be honest, there, but that will at some point be supported, and I hope we get the same for Windows. In Qt 4, we had the gesture manager, which is still there for widgets. The problem was that it never really worked, it seems, and we had a lot of trouble, so that's why we took a step back and for now started with the PinchArea and MultiPointTouchArea. Long term, I suppose we might need to introduce something like this again, but right now we don't have anything like that.
So at the moment it's a bridge to the OS implementation.
Yes.
Okay.
That's in the works still. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I operate on two pinch areas or two multi-touch points areas at the same time?
Yes, that's actually possible. It should just work. If not, it's a bug. One problem we have currently, though, is that the MouseArea, because it operates on mouse events, actually, if you have two mouse areas, that will not work. So if you have two multi-point touch areas, it works. The mouse areas, we only synthesize a mouse event for one touch point. So we actually have patches to make MouseArea and Flickable handle touch directly instead of going through the mouse. But it is really tricky, and we had quite some tests falling apart, and we didn't dare rushing this because we don't want to break every application out there. So this is our plan to make it work nicely. So you can write a piano. Currently, you can only press one key at the time. And if the MouseArea would handle touch directly, it would be no problem to handle several. So currently, no, sadly.
Question about mouse press event. If you press on a mouse area and then another mouse area comes over it, do you get a cancelled event then as well, or does the mouse area get at least the release event?
No, currently we do not track movement of mouse areas at all, is the simple answer. It is something we also considered looking at, but I don't think it will happen very soon. So if you right now have the mouse pressed on something and that accepts the first event, then it will get all follow-up events, even if it moves around and the mouse is somewhere else. So you have only one so-called mouse grabber. And if you move another mouse area on top of it, it will just never see the event until you release and click again on that position.
Okay, so you will get so this mouse area that got the pressed event will also get the release event.
Yes, always, assuming of course it accepted the press. The mouse area that accepts the press will get all events until release or somebody steals it.
Okay, another question. You said there was, so you showed a functionality for automatic tab navigation. Is there also an automatic cursor navigation for up and down?
And the thing why we don't have the automatic cursor navigation is that it is actually quite hard to look at the geometry because we can have items at arbitrary position anywhere in the tree. So we need to look at each item's geometry. And since we still want QtQuick to be really fast and flexible, we chose that there the key navigation is hopefully enough, and that on desktop the tab key is the usual means. So we made that one convenient because we don't need any state in there. Yes, another question. Great.
Hello. I have two questions. First is coming back to your circle example.
Yes.
Would it be possible to have a hover event on the?
I believe I tried and it works. Wasn't there a hover in there somewhere? Let me check. So no, it's not doing hover. We can just try it after. I believe it should work, but I'm not 100% sure at the moment. Yes, we can just check it.
Okay, and my second question is it possible to have an, let's say, image and use an alpha channel to accept
yes,
presses?
Actually. I believe we had an example like that, but it's also done via some trickery in the image that in the end checks what the pixel at the mouse position would be. I believe we have an example in, if I'm not completely mistaken, but I'm not 100% sure. We can just look it up. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
If you have two flickables on top of each other, one that is a horizontal one and a vertical one, how can you change the sensitivity of the vertical one so if you want to scroll to the right that it's not scrolling down?
Well, the Flickable has a property to let it only scroll left or right, right? Maybe I misunderstood the question, but...
No, now we have a problem on an onboard computer in a truck, so we have a lot of movement up and down. So if you want to scroll to the right, we in a lot of cases have that the list view is scrolling down instead that the view is going to the left or the right.
Okay. I believe Flickable has this property to only go left or right, and I think that the threshold can probably be configured. I would have to look at the code, to be honest, to say something really qualified there. They should work nicely on top of each other, but it might be that the other Flickable then triggers too easily. Okay. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, sorry. Yes?
So, where does the code lie that handles all the click events and the touch events and stuff? Is it done in the renderer or inside QtQuick item, or where does it lie?
That's a nice question. I see you will be contributing and fixing this stuff. That's great. If you look inside the QtDeclarative module, there's we always have the source folder inside there. Then there's the QtQuick. So generally, it's all in declarative source quick, and then inside there you have two things. The actual management of the focus and delivering the events is mostly in the QtQuick window. The window is the base class also for QtQuick view. So there's the code that tries to figure out which item should get the event. Should I send a mouse event after the touch event and so on? And then the actual QtQuick item, of course, has the direct, if I get a Q mouse press event, a mouse event, then do this or that. So inside the same directory where QtQuick window is, you find the QtQuick MouseArea and QtQuick Flickable and all the other elements. And they have event handlers that react to the event. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but there is not always a window I have defined in QML. So
that's true, but implicitly you always need a Q window, and inside there, if you have any QML on screen, you have a QtQuick window. So
creates one.
Exactly. If QML scene finds the top level object is not a window, then it creates one for you and puts your items inside. Actually, QML until recently would not accept any elements that were a window because it used QtQuick view directly always, which is already a window. And having a window inside a window directly didn't make sense. But that is fixed, luckily, so that QML will take either a window or a non-window element and then on demand create the window.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, this is amazing. More questions. Wow.
We have time for two more questions.
I wasn't sure how relevant this talk was. It seems like you guys did run into things.
Hello.
Yes.
I tried a similar example you showed, a Flickable, which I can move with a gesture swipe, and it has buttons, and I had problems to when I only want to swipe and don't press a button. How would you realize it? You showed it.
That's the cancel
opposite.
event you get. So you need to handle either if you declaratively do the pressed as I had, then it will automatically behind the scenes the press goes away. But if you actually implement the button, then you want the button to implement. You probably have something on pressed and on release, and then you want to on cancel just undo whatever you were about to do. So it's just declaring on cancel colon and then yeah.
So it
pretend nothing ever happened.
Is there an on tap gesture still, or
well,
you handle it all with mouse areas?
This is with the mouse. If you set the keyboard focus, as I showed, it's either done explicitly or you have the active focus on tap set, but that will simply give you the focus.
Okay, no, I mean there was a gesture area, a touch event on tap. What's it called? I thought it's just a click, like a click, but with your as a touch event. It isn't there. It isn't there now. It was in the labs, I guess.
Okay. Yes, so the labs gestures. I don't really know them that much.
So when I want to click with my finger, it's handled like a mouse.
Okay.
Now or not?
Yes, on the MouseArea, it's currently like a click, because the MouseArea handles the touch event as mouse events. Okay. So they behave the same as if it was a mouse.
Okay.
Yeah. So the on press and on cancel and so on work. Wow. Any more questions? I mean, it's your lunch. I can stay hungry, that's okay.
Hi, a simple one. The multi-point area, if you got a list of points,
yes,
and if you lose track of one point, I guess the area doesn't try to figure out which point. If you press it again, it's like sort of lifting a finger up and down. The area doesn't try to remember the last point that was in the area around, and you're just getting the list. And if you're losing one, then the order gets messed up. So you have to figure it out for yourself, right?
Well, actually, on the example here, it seems to work. I still have it running. That is good. So I can try to put it on the camera again. Somehow this is really hard. The mirror thing is not working for me. So if the first finger is always red, the second finger will be green. And if I take the second finger away and put it down again, it will be the same. Of course, yeah.
So let the green stay and
yeah.
move the red one up.
Okay. True, but it. Oh, sorry. So if I start again with the red one, I take the green one, and if I move the red one up, actually it will again become the first one. I was not sure about that. That's why I tried it. So from the implementation actually of the touch events, because whenever a finger is lifted, we have no idea if the same finger or something else is put down again, of course. So we just keep creating new touch point IDs internally. But it seems like the MultiPointTouchArea then always gives you a new first and second and so on point.
So try it with 3 fingers. So first, second, third, and lift up the first.
Okay.
I said,
well,
if you tap first, second, third, then lift up the first and tap again.
Yes.
So lift up the first.
Yeah.
The third. Tap the third.
Well, now, of course, the third becomes the first, because
it's okay. That was basically what I wanted.
Exactly.
to know.
We don't do magic, and we don't try to figure out this was roughly in that area or so. That I think would be just too much. You can maybe write an example for doing that. I'm sure there are some heuristics, but yeah. Well, I think we start to go over to lunch. I'll be around the DJR booth. Please talk to me. It's great to get so much feedback. I see I have a few things to look at. The hover handling is not always perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frederik.